The utilitarian is interested in the good. The action, decision, or policy that results in the most good is the ethically superior action, decision, or policy. But, we might ask, how is good distributed? What does the utilitarian say about that? Consider three distributions of goods in a population of 10 people. In the first one, everyone has 2 units except for one who has 32 units. In the second case, everyone has 5 units. And in the third case, one person has a meager 3/10 of a unit, 8 people have 3 units, and one person has 28 units. What is the utilitarian assessment of this situation? Since the utilitarian is interested only in the total good that results, 1 and 2 are morally equivalent since they each total to 50 units. Because 3's total is greater than 50, it is a morally better outcome than either 1 or 2. It might be more effective for some of you to consider this visually. As you see, in 1, everyone has the same level of good except for one person. In 2, everyone has the same good regardless. And in 3, one person has a great deal of good and one person has a great deal less of good. The fact that there is far more inequality in 1 than in 2 doesn't seem to enter the utilitarian's moral calculus. And indeed, distribution 3 is deemed morally better than the others, and yet it not only has extreme inequality, but it also has someone, person number 4, in abject misery compared to everyone else. This appears to be a serious shortcoming of utilitarianism. The distribution of good, we would think, should be an ethical matter, and yet utilitarianism seems to lack the resources to address this issue. Indeed, the situation is even worse for the utilitarian. In the reading, Hausman and McPherson draw a distinction between maximizing total good and maximizing the average good. Does it make a difference if the utilitarian is maximizing total good or maximizing average good? If we look at the 3 distributions, there is no difference. 1 and 2 have the same total good and the same average good. 3 has a greater total good and a greater average good than either 1 and 2. Choosing between total good and average good makes no difference, and that is because we have kept the size of the population constant. But what if the size of the population is not fixed, so that the size of the population is itself a matter of ethical assessment? This would be the case if we were considering reproduction policy or population policy. What if we were to ask whether one size of a population is better from an ethical point of view than another size? When we raise the question, the difference between considering total good and average good becomes dramatic. If we wanted to increase the total good, then we should increase the size of the population. Consider distribution 2, where everyone has 5 units of good. Suppose we added an 11th person. As long as the good of the 11th person is greater than 0, the total good of the second distribution with 11 people is now greater than the total good of the first distribution with 10 people. Well, we can pursue this further and add a 12th, a 13th, a 100th person. We are thereby, in adding people, increasing the total good of 2. Of course, at some point with all these extra people, the good of some of the original people will go down. But as long as we add even more people whose good is greater than 0, that is to say, whose lives have some good, however minimal, then we can compensate for the decline in good in the other people. In the end, we have maximized the total good by maximizing the population to the point where There are a lot of people, but everyone has a life just barely worth living. Many people would call this a repugnant conclusion. Suppose, on the other hand, we chose to consider only average good. Then that would push us in the opposite direction. Suppose that the good that existed in 2 arises from the available resources. If we eliminated one person from distribution 2, there would be only 9 people to share the resources, so this would likely increase the average good. If we keep repeating this, we would have the result that the greatest average good entails the smallest population possible. Of course, with fewer people, the good from the available resources might be smaller, but even if the good from the available resources shrinks from 50 to, say, 10, if the population shrinks to 1, that nevertheless results in a greater average good than the initial 10-person population. To summarize, the distribution of good appears to be a problem for utilitarianism. If the population size is held constant, utilitarianism seems unable to distinguish one distribution of good from another, and therefore seems unable to address the concern of inequality. If the population size should vary according to ethical principles, the utilitarian seems forced to, as we just illustrated, what's called a repugnant conclusion. And importantly, these conclusions seem to apply regardless of how the good is defined.